Welcome to A Bit of Insight with Lisa Mosbey, your weekly dose of health, wealth, and everything else. Hey, there are moments in life when even storytellers fall silent, when the words fade and we're left with the raw sound of love, loss, and everything in between. Today's guest knows that silence well. Through caring for her parents, navigating profound grief, and rediscovering gratitude, she's learned that even when the mic goes silent, our stories still speak. Hey, everybody, welcome to A Bit of Insight. I'm Lisa Mosbey, your host. I want you to grab your coffee and let's chat. My guest today is Carrie Caulfield, and she's an award-winning audio producer and expert in dialogue editing and post-production. You know, her work has been heard on platforms like Audible and iHeartPodcasts and beyond, all of those places that you've listened to your podcast. She's a creative force behind some of the industry's most compelling stories, including the Signal Award-winning podcast, Psychedelic Frequency. But today's conversation goes far beyond sound design. It's about the quiet spaces between the notes. Carrie has walked through the profound experience of caring for her parents, losing her parents. And through that journey, she's discovered the new depths of resilience, compassion, and gratitude. Her story is a reminder that even when life's volume fades, there is still music in the memories and healing in the love that remains. Hey, Carrie, welcome to A Bit of Insight. Thanks for being with me today.
Hi, Lisa, and thank you for that beautiful introduction. I was not expecting that.
Oh, my pleasure. You know, it's just we had a conversation ahead of time because we were in a business conversation, and Carrie had shared her story with me, and it was profound because your mom went through what my dad went through what your mom went through, and we had so much crossover that I thought we could share some of these stories and maybe support somebody who's listening, somebody who's going through this time of loss, of grief, just not knowing what to do. And being that we are on the other side of it, we're going to try to keep it light. But tears kind of happen. Sometimes this is an emotional topic. So wherever we go, that's the right place. Those are the people that we're going to support today. So tell us, you're always listening deeply. What is it like for you to be on the other side of that? When you're listening differently as a caregiver through loss. I know my parents were telling stories all the time, and I was just like, rearrange my schedule. I'm not here because I wanted to be there listening. Can you share a little bit about, how that was for you to be the listener this time?
It was surreal, I guess I would say. They were my parents, right? So there's this deep emotional thing happening inside of me that I'm also like trained to listen to things as well. So then there's that kind of objective like storyteller and being like, I'm going to grab this and I'm going to grab this. So it was a really wild experience. But over time, that kind of objective person went away, right? That as I got more and more into what they were experiencing and just what they were sharing, even with my dad's dementia, like there was one time, and there were things I learned I didn't know about him because he was literally reliving his past memories in front of me. Like I didn't know he was in a band until all of a sudden I was the stewardess on his flight. And he was wondering what time we were going to land in Chicago.
Wow.
Yeah.
I didn't
So
have that experience, but my folks were reminiscing about those childhood stories that I had never heard.
mhm,
There was, I think it's such a sacred space. And oftentimes we put our parents in a nursing home, not me, we, but society. When I say so we, I mean society, we put our parents in a nursing home and we don't get to experience that. And that's why I wanted to bring this idea of gratitude along with grief, like talking about the emotional and spiritual connections that start to happen when you're in that space with your parents as they're actively dying. What surprised you the most about that experience?
how much I didn't know about my parents. right? And this reaffirmed as I'm going through their belongings, as I'm trying to settle, when I was trying to pack up their estate and work all that out, those stories that come up. Um, you know, my father was a storyteller, right? He
Yeah.
was a storyteller too. And my mother always had, she was from Denmark. She always told me stories of the old country kind of thing. So I had those certain types of stories, the ones that repeat, right, over and over again throughout your life, from childhood, as you get to an adult, maybe you get a little bit more of those pieces. But this was really, really this was a really eye-opening time, right? Because I got to see my parents on a completely different level through those stories,
Yeah.
right? Like I just, as I said, I didn't know my father was ever in a band. I would never have considered him musical. Um, and then I also, the other stories also came from their friends,
Yeah.
right? People sharing memory when my dad, really couldn't remember who anybody was. I would hear from, this friend or that friend, oh, it's really a shame because I have so many great memories of your father doing X, Y, and Z. Like I didn't know my father when he was maybe after, after graduating college, he bought himself a Wurlitzer band organ and rebuilt it or like fixed it up and housed it in a church, like in a building, or in like the church rented him out a space, I think, and he said, and I got this from one of his friends. He said something like, the church and I got along fine as long as I didn't play the band organ on Sundays and they didn't like have choir practice, on Tuesdays kind of thing. So like they weren't competing sounds. And stories of just and I was the family historian as well, right? So I did all the genealogical research and everything. So I already knew a lot about my family, but like these little intimate stories, like my dad spending time on the farm that his grandparents ran, and just little pieces like that, like picking the grapes off the vine kind of thing, didn't know about until the end of his life. So I would definitely say much more my dad's dementia let me in on those stories
Mhm.
than my mom's, because she passed away from heart disease. So um, with my mom, I got a lot of kind of closure in the conflict we had, right? She'd be like, she would explain why she did certain things or why, there were certain situations that happened. But, which was difficult at the time. But for my dad, it was like I was being led into this whole new world that I had known nothing about. Um, because he wasn't super into his family. Like he had to be forced to call his family kind of thing. And I don't know how much of that is a man thing or how much of that is just like, he was just in his own world and he didn't really, care all that much. Um, but I started learning he had these deep, loving memories of his one set of the Wayner grandparents, right? Which that farm is still in the family, I'm glad to say. And that's I learned from my genealogical research that farm goes back to, you know, well before the founding of the country. So just to have that, like there's some place I can actually go, right? And take my son
Heather,
through and say, these are the stories that my dad told about this specific place.
yeah. I was very aware of the fact that these were the last times I was going to hear some of these stories. We may have heard them over the years. They may have been something that they shared often, but when somebody is actively dying and you know that the end is near, those stories, like like your ears just listen deeply, like they resonated with me in a different way. I've heard that before, and then I heard something different this time. It's kind of like their emotion that came forth when they were telling them this time for the last time. That's what really landed for me in spending time with them and wanting to rearrange my whole schedule when all of a sudden they started sharing stories. Many of
Yeah.
us, speaking of which, many of us try to keep working through grief or through, caretaking and providing for them. How did you navigate your creative work while being a caregiver and, the emotions of watching your parents start to fade away? And then after, when there's grief
Yeah.
that you're just trying to process.
Right. I laugh because there were times where I was huddled up on the floor in the fetal position, crying, just like sobbing my eyes out. Like, I don't know how I'm going to do this.
Yeah.
And specific for psychedelic frequency, this that project kind of started when I came to my parents' house to take care of them. And then it didn't really end until my mom had almost passed away. So, and there was a lot of bumps in the road for that project. Very complicated. Talking about psychedelic healing. I mean, there was a learning curve. Like, there was a lot of research I had to do before being able to even wrap my head around the concept. And here I am. I'm like, I've got this deadline, right? But my father with his dementia didn't care about his deadline. Like my mom's, body didn't care about my deadline. And I'm like, it was a mix because at times it felt like the work felt like a lifeline, right? Like this is literally like taking me to the land of the living when I'm in the land of the dead right now, or the pre-dead. I don't know how to describe it, but that's what it felt like. And I literally, like, if it wasn't for the support of like my son being like, "Mom, you can do it. You can do it," and just maybe taking things one step at a time. But it was so hard. Like, I was dealing with topics for psychedelic frequency that I was experiencing, like grief and loss and trauma. And here I am. I'm just like pushed in. Like, I'm living it. I'm living it. And then I had another project after that, or it ended or started when psychedelic frequency ended, called Just One Person. And again, that's about trauma and family dynamics and the stories you don't know about your parents and why it leads them, why your childhood was like your childhood was, kind of thing. So I'm like, the topics I'm dealing with professionally are super heavy, and then the topics I'm dealing with personally are super heavy. So I look back now and I don't know how I did it. Like, I guess that you just have to keep going. You just have to keep like living and doing the thing. Um, and I have always been a like, just keep pushing and kind of like one step at a time, you'll get there. There's light at the end of the tunnel. But there was an actual light at the end of the tunnel for my parents, right? There was an expiration date on their lives. And so it just made it really, really complicated internally and externally, I would say. But I don't know. I can't like name
Yeah.
um, one thing except for I just had like this in my head. It was just my lifeline. It was just like pulling me out of kind of darkness and despair by going into darkness and despair. Make that make
Yeah.
sense. But I also took a
There's
stint
two.
and I took a stint and taught high school while my mom was in hospice. I started teaching a high school podcasting class, like twice a week. And honestly, just being with those kids, with those young people, they're so vibrant and exuberant and full of energy and like thinking about their futures. They're all like mostly juniors and seniors. And it was like my respite, quite frankly. It was
Yeah,
my
there's
best,
two
even
things that
though
you
it was,
said in there.
yeah,
That the one was being tethered. You're using the word lifeline or connected. For me, the word that
yeah,
came to mind was being tethered. I had to tether to something, like tether to something
yeah,
in this life. Like
yeah,
for me, I was planning trips and travel and envisioning what some of that stuff could look like someday, with no timeline on it. But it helped to tether me here. And then also the rearranging the schedule, be telling everyone in my sphere there are going to be times when I need to cancel. This is what I'm doing, and
yeah,
this is the most important thing for me. This is my priority, is to be with them when they have their last breath, to fulfill their dying wishes, to make sure that everything goes the way that they wanted it to go, even if I didn't agree with some of their choices.
mm,
It was about them and their decisions, and to be able to
yeah,
be that person to provide that. After the fact, I was grateful I did it, but every single day I would say, I can't do this, I can't do this, I can't do this, I'm
yeah,
standing in the hospital, I can't do this. Like, how do you get out of that mindset of just thinking I can't do this? And you said you pushed forward. For me, I don't know if it was as much pushing forward as it was surrendering. When you're laying in a ball on the floor crying, or in bed sobbing into a pillow because you don't want them to hear you. um, it was like surrendering to the process is what I finally had to do, to be able to stop saying I can't do this, because girl, there's no choice, this is happening
no, right,
with or without you. How
yeah,
do you want to show up? Is this how you want to
right,
show up?
right,
Or do you want to show up fully present, experiencing the emotions, moving through, not getting stuck? Those are some of the things
yeah,
that kind of came up as you were sharing your story.
yeah. And I mean, it was the hardest thing, and I will tell I'm trying to get my son to, because he was with me, and I'm trying to get him to understand, like, this is one of the hardest things you will ever experience in your life. You
Mhm.
can make it through this. You got it. Like nothing is really ever going to be quite that intense, except for maybe when I pass away.
Yeah.
But I was like, I'm put me in a nursing home. We're good. I'm not gonna be mad at you.
Uh-huh.
um, but it really was, you said, like, how they wanted to die was really important, right?
Mhm.
How they wanted to go out was really important to them, and then became really important to me. I'm not going to say that I did an incredible job the whole time. I mean, I don't want anybody to walk away
Let's
thinking,
be
oh,
real.
I was like Saint
Yeah.
Carrie, because, oh no, it was sloppy and messy and trial and error. And you just pray sometimes that you're doing the right thing. And because it was with my parents concurrently, like, this was I don't know if I told you, but there was, like, happening at the same time,
Mine too. But I had
right?
both my
Yeah,
parents for the last 4 years of their life. Yeah. And they died nine
yeah,
months apart. Mhm.
yeah. My parents died 6 months apart.
Mhm.
Um, so it was, and we had other family around, and there were other family dynamics that were not the best, unfortunately. But I I just really wanted, like, I thought about, who do I want to be in that moment? What is the story going to be here in the future? Am I, I don't necessarily need to be a hero, but can I be like a supporting cast member? You know? And it was completely imperfect. There are times, things, I regret, like, there were times when I lost my temper with my dad. But I know that, like, if Hadeen had not had dementia, like, he would have been like, Carrie, don't worry about it. Like, this is really hard. Don't worry about it. I'm okay. Like,
Yeah.
that kind of thing. So, because when somebody has dementia, you're not just grieving the fact that they're going to die. You're grieving the fact that you've already lost the person you love. Like, they're already gone, right? And I was very thankful that my dad never really, well, mostly knew who I was. He had forgotten my son, so that was hard. Um, and there were times where he, again, like, he was on a plane or he was in the hospital. He once fired me. Um,
My dad called me the B word once, and I looked at him, and he didn't have dementia. Fortunately, my folks, their bodies were failing, but their minds were sharp for me. Fortunately
Right.
for me, because I got to experience them that way. I don't know if that's always what's best for the patient, but I was so grateful, gratitude, grief through gratitude, or gratitude with grief. I was so grateful that I could have those conversations, and they were of sound mind all the way right up to, being able to tell me what you want. How can I support you? But yeah, he did, and he knows that that's my biggest pet peeve in the world is that B word. When a woman gets called that B word, because I was 18 when I got into business. I've been an entrepreneur my whole
Oh, yeah.
life, and I have been called that so many times when I was assertive, or I stood up for myself, or I did something, and it's like, I am not. I'm just really good at what I do, and I know what I want, and I'm really clear about it. But he did. We disagreed with something, and he flipped that word out there, and he put both hands over his face, and his eyes got, so big, like silver dollars. He's like, I'm sorry. And it's like, Dad, it's okay. I can't experience what you're experiencing in your body. That's why I keep asking. And I want you to tell me so that I know, but I can't experience what you're experiencing. And we were okay. It never happened again. But I was so grateful, because I see people who have to deal with dementia, and it's so much
Yeah.
easier to just put them in a home rather than being that person, because the things that they say and do, like, rip you down. And
Mhm.
you feel personally attacked, like you can do nothing right. And I've had those conversations with some people who are in
Yeah.
the midst of it. So here's the question. What did self-care look like for you during this season? Like, even when it was imperfect, were there ways that you could take care of yourself,
Oh,
or
yeah.
that you did, or things that you regret not doing that maybe you could offer our audience to suggest that they do it?
Um, Really, I going into this, I knew self-care was going to be critical. Like there was no way I could work and also deal with these really heavy issues while doing the physical labor of taking care of my parents. Um, so for me, self-care was doing my best to make sure I get rest. Like this is a joke in our family that like Caulfields cannot survive without sleep. We can be the meanest, nastiest people if we don't sleep. Like it is essential because my son says it's because our cognitive process is so intense that we require just extra energy, right? That's his way of rationalizing it. But sleep is super crucial. And so I would, if I had 15 minutes to take a break, then I would be like taking a cat nap, right? If I, knew that at some point I just figured out my dad's schedule, like he'll be up at 2 a.m. So I'm going to go to bed at like 8 to make sure that I can get up because he would fall asleep about 7:30. So it was almost like having a newborn, like you sleep when they sleep. And then journaling became super important to me. So every morning I had this like ritual. So I'd get up, I'd have coffee, I'd, faff around for, a little bit, maybe 30, 45 minutes, deal with whatever needs to be dealt with my parents. And then I would go um, journal, do yoga, even if it was like for 5 minutes, I just, get that because also maintaining my body became super important. So I could lift up my dad, right? And be on my feet all day and not have that discomfort. And then I would take a shower. And it became this kind of trifecta of things when I didn't do it, it would show up pretty immediately if I wasn't taking good enough care of myself. And then just, I just ate so much fruit. I can't tell it. Like for whatever reason, I just fruit. I would go to bed with a bowl of cherries, right? Which is kind of funny because life is like a bowl of cherries, right? But I would have,
Sweetness, when you're dealing with that emotional grief, or I oftentimes say when people, my background is as a holistic health practitioner. You probably didn't know that, but we study that, like the changes in diet and the foods. So we were craving the sweetness when you're going through grief or sorrow or bitterness. It's like, oh, I just need that sweetness, that joy that sweetness creates. So it's interesting that you say that. We may notice changes in our diet.
Oh, wow. I would not have expected that, but
Mhm.
yeah, so it's like cherries, berries, and dark chocolate. I
Yeah,
didn't want anything like overly sweet. What I was looking
yeah,
for was kind of that natural, kind of earthy
yeah.
sweetness. And that's another
Magnesium's high in
thing.
chocolate's high in magnesium, and that calms the nervous system. It reduces anxiety and stress in people. If you're
Okay.
doing dark chocolate, it's even better because it has more
Yeah.
concentration of that magnesium. So yeah, it's when you look back at it, you can start to kind of peel the layers off. Like our bodies
Yeah.
intuitively kind of know things that we don't need to know in our brains. We
Right.
can take care of ourselves if we trust our instincts. So that's interesting. Thank you for sharing that piece.
You're welcome. I will say the other thing I did was get out into nature. So I spent a lot of time, as much time as I could outside. I'd go to the lake. I go from visit if my mom was in the hospital or my dad was in the hospital. I'd go visit him and then I'd go to the lake. Or I'd even, oddly enough, go sit in the cemetery just because it was like a nearby, it was like 2 minutes up the road, green space. Right. So I kind of developed a relationship with this like one quadrant of graves where I just feel like I'd go and check in on them. It
Wow.
was, and I guess maybe kind of preparing myself almost for my parents passing away and then visiting in a different, like looking back, I can see that it's kind of like prepping myself for visiting in a different way and still being able to like kind of have that conversation. So I'd be having conversations with dead people. I just, hey, Mr.
Yeah.
Smith, how you doing today? Like kind of
Oh,
thing.
interesting.
But it brought me peace.
Yeah. It's such a quiet and serene place. I've worked in cemeteries a lot all over the country and I visit them and people always think I'm weird because I go find the oldest ones. I walk in cemeteries. I've stayed in Airbnbs across the street from a cemetery because it was across from a cemetery. So it's interesting
Yeah.
that you say that. I do find a tremendous sense of peace from that. Um,
Yeah.
Another question is there a sound song or maybe a simple ritual that brings you peace or makes you feel close to your parents today after their passing? Like things happen, I hear music on the radio or I drive through a neighborhood that my dad said something to me and all of a sudden it hits me like a rock in the head or something. But is there a sound, song, simple ritual, anything that kind of tethers you to their memories since they've been gone?
Well, certainly with my dad, anything like anything with sound, just the act of listening to sound, it is, you know, it's almost like he's with me, right? When I do that now, because he has this huge interest in like band organs, the music that plays with carousels. I mean, he actually, I remember when I was younger, he would listen to these old songs trying to identify what they were. They were kind of lost to time, but he worked at the Library of Congress, so he had access to all the archives, all the, you know, everything. So he did save a lot of music that would have otherwise been lost. But I remember he would have me listen to like this one instrument in this one song. Like he was unknowingly to him, he was training my ear to like identify sounds in songs and pick out the individual parts of the whole. So I use that skill even now, and I can't help but do that when I listen to music. So that always makes me think of him. So any kind of like
Yeah.
listening in that way makes me think of him. For my mom, I had this really interesting experience the day she died. Um, First of all, um, she was, I think, right before she died, my one sister, and we didn't have a great relationship, but she was yelling at me, right? And I yelled back. I tried not to, but I just yelled back, and the power went out. Yeah. So we had to go flip like for the whole house. We had to flip the breaker. It
Oh,
was like, to me, it was her way of saying, just cut it out. I'm about to die. Like, there are other things you need to be focusing on now. And she passed about 15, 20 minutes later, like completely. But you could tell, right? And I can't even tell you how we could tell, but we could just tell she was
I
getting
noticed the
ready to
breathing
go.
change. We noticed the breathing change.
Yeah, maybe that's it. My one of my sisters was an EMT, so I think she clocked it before we did.
Yeah.
So, and then the other thing, like that night, um, after after she'd passed, the coroner and come and taking her away and everything, and getting ready because hospice is 24/7, right?
Mhm.
So I usually took the night shift, so I hadn't like had a shower. It'd been a while since I had a shower. I was getting ready to like bring my stuff into the bathroom, and we had the Amazon Alexa in the bathroom, to play music. Um, and a song came on, unprompted, and it was that, I don't know if you know the song, but it's I am my mother's savage daughter.
Yeah.
And I felt like I just froze. I'm like, this had never happened before with the Alexa. It never just came on,
Yeah.
right? And that song in particular, right? Because I know that my mom, I was kind of always the daughter my mom didn't have to, really worry about. Like, she always, ever since I was little, she told me, "Oh, you'll be fine. You're gonna, she used to tell me, you're gonna wrap a man around your finger, you'll be okay." And then our relationship changed as an adult, where my sisters were having a bunch of problems, and I was dealing with my problems, like, kind of on my own, which in some ways was great, but in some ways, you want your mom, whatever. So, but I, she used to tell me I reminded me of her grandmother, who was like a very um, smart, but she would argue about anything. Like, she would defend her point to the death, kind of. But she recognized, I guess, that strength in me. I was the one who was like, let's get you, when at the end of her life, like, let's get your medical directives, let's get the wills, let's get everything in place so that when you do pass away, because that's what's going to happen, obviously, we're set, right? So, I was the one always kind of behind my scenes, getting everybody ready for my mother to die. Um, and when that song came on, I'm like, you've got to be kidding me, Mom.
Look it up and check it out. I don't know what it is. I haven't heard it, but yeah, I totally will
Oh
look that up.
yeah, it's a
Huh.
very empowering song. I actually listened to it kind of as part of my yoga practice. Like, I would always, because I love music and sound.
Mhm.
I had a playlist called Namaste Bitches. And that gives you an indication of kind of that, like, oh, we're all zen, but don't mess with us, because we will take you on and win,
We're in the zone.
kind
Yeah.
of.
Leave us yeah.
Yeah,
Keep your
yeah.
distance. Yeah.
So that, when that song came, I mean, I kind of lost it when that happened. I was like, okay, all right, yeah.
Huh. Say the
um
name of it again for our audience.
I think
My
it's called Savage Daughter.
Savage Daughter.
Savage
Okay.
Daughter. Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah. And it really is about, just kind of the maternal empower, like, maternal lineage being empowered, kind of thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was pretty and then for her also, because she always said, "Oh, play Let It Be at my funeral." So, like, every time I hear that song, I think of her, and I heard it a lot after she passed. I was like, "Oh,
Yeah.
this song is," I hadn't heard it for ages, right? But then she passes, and it's on the radio quite frequently. Um, but yeah, that really is um, connecting with them through music and sound.
Yeah.
Um,
I love
my
how you can
father,
smile and laugh through all of this. You know, people, when we're in the
yeah,
midst of it, we think we'll never smile, we'll never laugh, we'll never experience joy again. But yet then you create some space and time. And people say time heals all wounds. And I don't think it heals it. I think it expands us to be able to
mhm,
handle it. I don't think it goes away. I think it's always in
yeah,
there. But with time, our brain starts to go find those moments of joy that we can go back to. And I'm also kind of equating that to that gratitude. How has gratitude helped you reframe the experience of deep loss? Like I think of those moments when I got to hear the stories and those moments when I got to help them through something or, do some deep breathing with my dad because he was on oxygen the last 4 years and we would just hold hands and we'd stare at each other's eyes and we would be in this space. It was this magical bubble that I got to be there. And so I can get into that gratitude space in my brain and
mm,
it pushes that grief maybe off to the side or sets it on a bookshelf and lets me sit in the happiness and joy. And I hear that and I see that on your face as you're telling these stories.
yeah. The other thing that still happens to this day is I kept my dad's watch, right? And it has this little alarm, like it goes beep beep, little Casio cheap watch. It's the same brand he had when I was a kid. And I feel like whenever I need a little like you got this or you did great, kind of like when I need a little something something to just keep going through this process, uh, I hear his watch.
Oh, yeah.
It'll be now. I know it's programmed. Like logically, I know it's programmed where it goes off on the what if at whatever hour and 52 minutes, and I don't know why specifically, but I guess that's the way it's programmed. Um, but I don't always hear it,
Right.
right? But some days, I can go weeks without hearing it at all. But when I'm having a bad day and need to pick me up, I hear it.
And it's there.
When I had just gone through something really with their estate, especially just because I'm the executor. So going, through all of um, that, I mean, it's a lot of work, or it's been a lot of work. We're at the very end, but when I didn't think I was going to be able to make it, right, I hear it, right, right. So that's that constant kind of not constant, but that's that little reminder of him that he's like, you got this, you can keep doing it,
Yeah.
because he always used to be like, he used to say, I'm a can do dad, like I can do things. I feel like that little beep is like can do, so
Yeah. I
yeah.
love it.
And I
That's a
am
great one.
grateful. Yeah, I am grateful for all of and I know the experience was hard and difficult, but I am, and very sad, but I am very grateful that I was able to get through it, right? That I was
Yeah.
able, I didn't go out in the street, lay down and die because it was that hard. But whatever they gave me, right, was enough to carry me through.
Yeah. Yeah. What has grief taught you about storytelling, connection, and purpose through this process?
Certainly, that there are a lot of little things you wouldn't even think of, um, that matter, more than you know. It isn't in like the big exciting stories, right? I mean, though they exist, but it's in the everyday showing up. It is, those are the times that's what matters. It's not the grand gestures, it's the everyday moments. It's not the big and flashy, it's the everyday moments. It is showing up and, living just what is a normal life, essentially. And just the people around, being there for the people around you, you know. Um, but and that, little stories are important to big stories. So yeah.
Moments. There were so
Yeah,
many
it's the moment.
moments. Mhm.
Yeah.
For someone listening who's maybe in the middle of loss, what What would you want them to know about hope and healing as we start to wrap this up?
That your strength, you aren't just like strong. Strength comes from weakness, right? Strength comes from vulnerability. Um, it 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 is not something that you can't pick up a bucket of it, like, it's just there. It comes from knowing you can do hard things, right? It comes from knowing that you can be a puddle on the floor, right? But that you're going to be able to pick yourself back up, like scoop yourself back together in that bucket. And that bucket of strength is you. Uh, yeah.
Beautifully said. Yeah, for me, it was surrender. Surrender to the process um, was my strength. My strength was in surrendering to it and stop saying I can't because I am going to get through it. I am going
Yeah.
to do it. We all will. And we don't
Yeah.
often recognize our strength.
Yeah.
But when we can surrender to it and know that, we're going to be carried through that process and that
Yeah.
the love for your parents and family will grow stronger and stronger through
Yeah.
it. You don't know it in the midst of it because you might be yelled at, you might be, dealing with some tough stuff, but it's the moments, the beautiful moments that start to become prevalent. They're at the
Yeah.
forefront of your brain. Some of the hard stuff goes away. I had the one incident I
Yeah.
remembered, but I don't think about that. I think about it because we were talking in context of the hardness of it, but that's not on a daily day to day. It's those moments, those
Yeah.
the music that you hear, the places that you go, the foods that you eat. I find myself ordering my dad's favorite foods and different things of that nature. Yeah.
Yeah. And
Well,
I will,
go ahead.
well, there's one more thing just to
Yeah.
add. Um, I really made myself like coming into my parents' house. I made sure to make myself like anything, any place that was just mine, like my bedroom. That was I made into a sanctuary, right? It had all the things I loved, right?
Yeah.
I leaned into um, stuff from childhood, right? So I had Hello Kitty everywhere. I
Yeah.
just anything that made me happy. I was like a pack rat. Anything that made me happy, like I made sure to put in my sanctuary, no matter how ridiculous it was. And I just being able to like build myself that retreat space was enormously helpful, and the self-care and all of that. It's like you've got to nourish yourself so you can nourish others. So I just want to throw that out there because I think I don't think I would be here, being able to talk to you about it, and being able to cope as well as I did had I not first taken care of myself.
Yeah. Now that you say that, I did do that. I bought nicer pillows, I bought nice sheets, I had a down comforter there. I don't have any of those things anymore because I let them go, gifted them to other folks. But I did. I didn't even realize. Thank you for that. When you have these conversations, when we open these doors and talk about this stuff, we even learn about what we went through, how intuitively our bodies and our minds start to provide for us and start to take care of us. If I did a quick intro. We were talking all about grief and gratitude when I opened this up. If people wanted to connect with you, or do you want to share a little bit about yourself here as we wrap this up?
So I think um, I will say that after my parents passed away, and after all the life insurance money was gone, all that stuff, is you have to get back to life, right?
Yeah.
So I took everything I learned through that whole experience and I kind of wrapped it and throughout my career really. So I was able to get a role as the director of production for the Legal Podcast Network. Um, it was a startup, so it was like, and it was remote, so it was scrappy and doable for me. And I kind of grew with the company, so I am now like got like, gosh, if you're an attorney, come see me. Go to the legalpodcastnetwork.com and we'll hook you up with some great podcast and marketing content. Um, But I am very grateful every day that I was able to, get through this and kind of start to create the life that I want. And you can also, aside from that shameless plug, you can find me at carrie.land, LAND, where just some basic stuff, and my social assets are all there. So
beautiful. And we'll, of course, have that information in the show notes for those that want to reach out and connect with her, or maybe share a note about your own story. You're more than welcome to do that. Carrie, thank you for sharing your heart and reminding us that grief isn't the end of the story. It's the space where love continues to echo. Through your courage, creativity, and openness, you've shown us how to find gratitude, even in the silence, and how we can let loss become a teacher rather than a thief of our time. So for everyone listening, remember this: when your mic goes silent, or when someone you love's mic goes silent, the story doesn't end. It deepens. Let's continue the conversation. We can talk about the folks that we've lost. Let the quiet moments become sacred, and let the love guide the way forward for you to get back to joy again. This has been a bit of insight. I'm Lisa Mosbey, your host. And this is all part of a Gratitude Through Grief series. So please check out the other episodes if you're still struggling and you'd like more support. And come on back next week. Thanks, everybody.
Great.
Thanks for joining me on A Bit of Insight. To get more involved with our wellness community, grab a copy of my book, Live Well, Travel Far, or to explore our travel offerings, visit the website at insightcenterforwellness.com. And if today's episode gave you something to think about, leave a review and please share it with a friend. This is Lisa Mosbey reminding you to live well, travel far, and always follow your insight.